And though the world is so different, it still comes down to the human story of how do people live in this world? How do they find meaning in this world? How do they make a change in their world? How do they find friendship, love, fear, anger? Like, how do they live, survive, and find meaning?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to This Comic Cooks. I'm your host, Vector, and I'm here with a very special guest. He is the brightest mind in the galaxy. I am honored to have one of the best design geniuses that we currently have in our pop culture, Mr. Ben Mauro. Ben, how are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me.
I am honored and privileged to have you here on our show. Have been kind of immersing myself in the world of Morrow, and I've been like the Huxley. It's been getting into my bones, into my DNA, and I've been just immersing myself as much as I could. So I'm very excited to talk to you today. I've noticed that you've worked on some of the biggest sci-fi worlds of the last decade, but Huxley kind of feels more personal. Before we deep dive in, I wanted to ask kind of how are you feeling seeing this universe take on a life of its own?
That's really cool. I mean, it definitely didn't happen overnight. It's very slow growing over the years. But I mean, it's kind of like I've kind of helped other directors and other companies do that over the years also. Like starting when I was in Weta, I worked on the Hobbit trilogy, Elysium and Chappie and Amazing Spider-Man 2. And also like I've seen worked on big things that were already big. I've worked on small things that slowly became big over time or maybe came out and it was too ahead of its time and over time grew into like a cult classic kind of thing or something that people really liked. So I kind of know it can take time. So it's been really cool to see Huxley coming out in book form and picking up a new audience there and the second book coming out in a totally different kind of genre, but in the same universe and finding totally different audiences and everyone kind of coming to this and seeing why it's special or why I think it's special. And it's been really gratifying and satisfying for sure. We just did a second, like a book signing for the new book, like a smaller one locally. And now that the second book's a bit more of a team working on it, it's been cool to see. Like it was just me alone sitting in a room making this. The first one was me alone, and now it's like, okay, here's people that helped me, and they're starting to see. It's like each time it's just starting to grow. Like maybe the third book signing is like now there's like 5 people, and then the next maybe something else. It's bigger. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool to be like I feel like on the ground level, on the ground floor of something that it feels a lot bigger and the world it just feels so expansive and like it gives me that Star Wars vibe of episode 4 A New Hope. It was like that small glimpse into this much larger world
Right.
and we've gotten to play in that world these decades after. I feel like that's what the feeling I get from Huxley of like there's so much more to explore. So
Sure.
I'm really interested to kind of pick your brain on
Yeah.
the I guess the different mediums that you're working in. What specifically about comics for you was something that you wanted to explore, and you said, "Hey, this would be the right avenue for Huxley."
Sure. Well, I grew up on graphic novels and manga and stuff, so, like, I always loved it, like, I'm a huge, like, Moebius fan, huge, like, Meta Barons. I liked heavy metal, but I think I really just love Moebius, it's, like, an
Mm.
old French illustrator, and huge fan of, like, Otomo, Akira, and Ghost in the Shell and stuff from all these amazing illustrators in Japan as well. I think the main thing was when I was starting to work on movies, and I had the desire to, like, tell my own stories and figure that out, and just seeing how long it takes to make a movie, how many people need to be involved on like a bigger project or a game. Like even an indie game can sometimes take a lot of people. And even comics can take a lot of people. Like if you open some of your favorite comics, there's sometimes like 10, 20 names in there to make some of these things, especially if it's like we need to get 10 of these done a year. Like it becomes like a production. So for me, I think at the time it was I have this idea. I really want to have the ownership and feeling like I did it all myself. And I think graphic novels are still one of the few ways that a single creator can write everything, illustrate everything, create everything. Now that I've done it, I feel like I'm okay to like work with other people to make the sequels or prequels. And but I think I just want to check that box. Like I can do it myself. It just takes a really long time, but I know I can. But so current prequel book, The Oracle, is definitely more of a team effort. Another writer involved, two other illustrators, director that helped with the trailers, a little bit of his stuff in there, some of the storyboards and stuff. But and after that, like It's like I planted the seed, it grew into a tree, and now I'm okay having a lot of help turning it into a forest kind of thing.
Yeah, man. It's so interesting to me. Like I said, it feels like that seed getting planted and it's just about to sprout and there's just gonna be so much. I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones. I really loved the Building a Universe documentary that you put
Oh,
out
thank
on
you.
the Huxley YouTube channel. That was so, number one, it was so interesting and captivating to get a glimpse into your daily life of seeing your wife, seeing your day to day. Here's you making coffee, and here's you doing all these different things, as well as understanding the kind of the impetus of this idea of Huxley and the world that you came from and your inspirations that you just talked about, Moebius and Akira and all these different things, all of those like little mini seeds, yeah, that went into it. And I highly recommend anyone, if you have a chance to check out the Huxley documentary, I will put it in the show notes. But it gave me a ton of insight into your creative process coming from the world that you came from. And like you said, in the documentary, you say, well, time's going to pass anyway. I might as well
Yeah.
do, this thing while the time is passing. And I feel like I have that in my own life as well, where there are things that I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen anyway. I might as well plant the seed. And it's something that I've been trying to teach. I have a 4-year-old son, and I think all the time of how I'm going to influence him and how I'm going to kind of give him the tools that he needs to succeed in life. And planting seeds is like the thing that I come back to over and over again of everything that is a success in my life is because I took the time to plant something and let it grow. There was nothing that happened overnight for me and just, oh, here it is. Like everything took the time, the planning and the preparation. So it was so interesting for me to see that in your world. Like you're working on a much grander scale than I am creatively, but it was just so interesting to see those parallels. So I loved seeing that anything in your world, the time and the planning and the preparation, the payoff has been there now. I'm seeing um, the different books that you had of the was it a Kickstarter that you did where it was like, all right, here's a super limited, there's one of one, or there's only so many of these different copies made. Seeing all of those things just coming to fruition, it was like, man, this is
Yeah.
inspiring for a creative to see this and to see someone doing it all on your own. Like kudos to you for all of those things.
Yeah.
No question there, but I just wanted to say that was really cool to
Sure.
see that in the
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah. I mean, because I was planning to I really wanted to be out there in a bigger way. Originally, I was like, if I can't find the right publisher, I'll do it myself. So there's some early limited versions of that, but luckily I was able to find a great publisher. I think the hardest thing is like getting the right partner that can like get it in bookstores and get it the coverage that you would hope, so people can organically and naturally find this walking around at a bookstore. And I think that was one of the bigger things. It took me a long time, but I think I found the right partner with James and Hudson and Read Only Memory, and the book is really showing up in bookstores all over the world, which is really amazing because I could never have done that myself. And I was kind of going down that road, and it was like I came to the realization like if I do this, all my time is going to be running to the shipping store and like
Right.
I don't have the time to be a publisher. I need to work on the next book, and it really like
Yes.
you need to divide up your time on what's most important to you, because yes, I could be a publisher and do all that, but the trade-off is there's no longer 2 new books or something with that time,
Right.
and just kind of have to figure out what you want to do and what's best for other people to take over, and kind of the compromises are just like right partnerships. And it was really cool because I had friends like in the biggest Kinokuniya in Tokyo finding the new book. But it's been interesting too because like the original book, I went to Tokyo and I don't think Western comics in Japan are really huge. So like I went to most of
Mm.
the bookshops I go to and they're like, oh, we don't really have those kind of books. But we can order it for you. But with the new book, it's like being featured in all those stores. So like it's been cool to see
Nice.
that like the first book reached a big audience in certain regions. The second book reached a big audience in regions at the first book, and it's kind of like starting to cross over. And it's that kind of stuff that I could never have done on my own. That's been
Mm.
really awesome. Or even like my old boss, Richard Taylor at Weta, I sent him some books, and he was like, "Oh, these are really awesome." And then over the weekend, he went to like a teeny bookstore in Christchurch, which is almost like at the bottom of like New Zealand, like bottom of the earth that you can actually live. And it was like a teeny little bookstore, not a huge
Yeah.
chain. And he saw my book on the bookshelf next to Greg Bodmer, who was another artist we worked with at Weta, and he was just like, "This is so awesome! Like your book's in the bookstore," and like it really made it like everywhere, like teeny little shop at the bottom. Like that's so cool to me, and it just gets out there in a way that I had only dreamed of and hoped for, which is really awesome. And I think there's something to time that is also important. Kind of getting back to the time thing, but like having something out there and allowing it to be in people's lives over many years and having them grow up with it and have them like I remember some comments from Denis Villeneuve on Dune, like he wanted to direct Dune because he grew up with this book and he had all these visions and ideas and pictures in his head. And when he directed the movies, like this is like been my dream and I really want to put all these things that I grew up in my head on the screen. And things like that is hard to maybe quantify and it doesn't really isn't really apparent immediately, but over time, having something out there and allowing people to live with it and grow up with it, and you never know where it's going to go, which is really awesome.
Yeah, that's it's like you never know who's going to be influenced by your work, and there could be, like you said, someone on the bottom of the globe that experiences Huxley and it unlocks something in them creatively, and then they are the next Denis Villeneuve or whoever. So yeah, that I find that to be fascinating. And also I am a video gamer and a lover of film and comics. So all of these things that you put into Huxley are right in my wheelhouse, like Halo, Dune, Akira, like all of these things meshing and melding together to create something new is exactly what I love. So Huxley, I think for my audience and for anyone who is into those things is going to be perfect. Right off the bat, the first thing that hit me when I was researching and when I was preparing for this interview was just the look of Huxley, the world and the characters. How did your background as a concept artist influence the way that you approached visual storytelling on the page for Huxley?
It helped a lot stylistically initially because the original graphic novel is like all kind of hand drawn and illustrated, and the new book is a bit more of like a visual storybook and a bit more almost like movie production art or game production art. But it wouldn't have been possible without the original graphic novel. But for the original graphic novel, it was very old school, like almost as like a not not necessarily like therapy or something, but like in working in movies, you have to like adapt and grow in a very fast changing environment. So like on a movie, maybe came out of school, I could draw and paint traditionally or digitally in Photoshop. And once you get into the movie industry, the director always wants the newest, shiniest thing. So it's like, I want photoreal images by lunchtime. I want ZBrush sculpture. I want like this photoreal 3D thing. I want to be able to rotate around. Like I want to see the final product as quickly, as fast as possible. And so you just have to adapt. Like what's the new tool? What's the new thing? And and in that environment, it's really exciting, but it's also, I started to feel like I was getting away from the thing that brought me into art, which was like drawing and painting and all this stuff. So like, I think personally, I needed like Huxley started as almost like I'll do whatever I have to do at the job. I'll learn every new trick and technique, and that's fine. But I want to be able to go home and like draw and make something that makes me feel creatively fulfilled and satisfied. So Huxley kind of was almost born out of this like, I'll do what I got to do for the job, and that's great. But as long as I have this thing for me, I'll be happy. Like I'm not compromising because I'm always going to be happy because both things will be fulfilled. And both of them kind of started to feed into each other at certain points too, where say on Elysium, we have a couple words on a page and then we had to illustrate every story moment in that movie for Neil. And so you get really good at like, what is that moment? Like, what is that moment when the villain is about to shoot the hero? And what is the moment when this spaceship crashes and the hero is rescuing his friend or something? Like, getting good at like illustrating that moment for a director who tells stories all day to be like, yeah, that's it. That's great. And then seeing those shots end up in the movie and you kind of get a sense for visual storytelling really well. And I definitely think a lot of that translated into uh, a lot of the story moments in Huxley, how I illustrated things. I mean, I definitely was like trying to look at graphic novels and things I love too, because visual storytelling in graphic novels is different than movies. So trying to find a balance of maybe the pacing feels like you're watching a show, but it's told in a way that only graphic novels can do, and trying to find a balance there was really fun.
Nice, man. Like I said, I can't wait to kind of for for more people to experience Huxley and to get into that world, because that's one thing I love about science fiction and comics and sci-fi and all these things. Getting into a world, feeling immersed, like you were part of that world, and exploring all the nooks and crannies of, like, again, go back to Star Wars, like, oh, Rogue One, this is a piece that you never saw before. This was an avenue of this huge world and this planet that you never seen before. Like, whatever, those type of things always interest me. Also, something that is really interesting to me is artificial intelligence. And I'm curious your personal take on where we are now in 2026 with AI, and how it's influencing so many vast parts of our lives. And is there something in Huxley that you want to say about AI, or put that into the bigger narrative? Because it's something that we haven't, I don't think, like, we have Terminator, we have a lot of different AI franchises that they talk about AI, but I don't think we've gotten to experience what it's like where we have it in the real world and it's coming down the pipeline. It feels like more prevalent than ever. It doesn't feel as much science fiction now as it did like
Right.
in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this stuff for forever. I mean, while I was writing all this, like imagining where all this goes, thousands of years in the future. Worked on a lot of movies where we were projecting like what robotics will look like and what a police robot, and like now where you kind of have these now, like those are
Yeah,
maybe this
yeah.
year, those will be in factories. It's kind of wild because a lot of the early stuff we explored on Elysium, actually, I am seeing almost literally like walking around now. And it's just like, wow, that was like the craziest like leap of science fiction where like, this will probably take 50 years. And now it's like for walking around,
Yeah,
like, wow,
yeah.
okay. I think some of the stuff for Huxley though, I really wanted to go thousands of years in the future. I think one of the
Mm.
things for me was trying to imagine, it's hard to imagine how much things will change. I think we're all starting to live through some of the early parts of that. But like for me, I kind of want to get to like the human story of, even though I think that's something about a lot of the best science fiction that I love particularly is like, even though the world is so different, it still comes down to the human story of how do people live in this world? How do they find meaning in this world? How do they make a change in their world? How do they find friendship, love, fear, anger? Like, how do they live, survive, and find meaning, even if the world is so different? And I think all great science fiction kind of projects these kind of human stories in those scenarios that I think is really fascinating to me. And maybe we will live thousands of years in the future and have to deal with that. And a lot of these stories that are told and we read are maybe almost like mental games of like, what would happen? Like, what would I do? Like, what did Paul Atreides do in this super 10,000 years in the future to deal with this and find meaning in his life? Or what did Max and in the Huxley universe, and how did Huxley deal with things in this future world? I don't want to spoil anything, but Huxley's is even crazier at his journey. But to me, that's what's really fascinating. Hopefully, people find interesting is, yeah, how did humanity live, adapt, find meaning, um, even if the world's so different.
Yeah, that's something, I do a Star Trek podcast, and that's something about Star Trek that I
That as
love.
well,
Of,
yeah.
you can put it no matter what century it's in, and they've got food replicators and all these things, holodecks, but the thing that makes them interesting is the human stories of what are these people doing, what are they experiencing when they meet new aliens, when they meet different things. So I think 100% I connect with that of making it human, keeping it grounded. That's what connects all of us together, um, and makes these stories interesting. It's just putting it in a different setting, a different stage, but you're still having that, the drama of human interaction is the key. So, oh, that's good.
I don't want to get too far into some Star Trek stuff, but there is one like theories about Star Trek and AI that I saw recently that
Ooh.
was kind of interesting. And I'm not sure if it's true, but you can kind of connect it where you're like, that kind of makes sense. Where like, at least Next Generation, like Picard is so obsessed with like Sherlock Holmes, and they're all obsessed with like
Mm,
music
mm,
from the past and all this stuff. And I saw someone speculating that, is that because at a certain point, artificial intelligence in that universe, human creativity kind of was removed out of the equation. So anything created before that time, there's so much admiration and respect because how did a person without technology come up with all these fascinating stories, and they're so much cooler than everything we have now because humans made it, and it has so much more meaning because of the story behind it. Like they're listening to Mozart music and listening to all these things, and they're almost romanticizing all these things that happened before this super advanced technology has brought them into the future where they're basically like, exploring the galaxy and going to this new frontier. But the creativity of humanity is like almost like a thing in the past, like pre advanced technology or artificial intelligence or whatever happened in kind of Star Trek universe. Kind of makes it like I
Yeah.
kind of that kind of connects, which is really interesting. Um, which is kind of a cool thing to think about, just like a cool Star
Yeah.
Trek.
That is, I mean, yeah, I mean, that is like exactly what I feel like that's the step that we're going towards, or the avenue that we're going down now with ChatGPT and a lot of the AI music stuff that's coming out now. I feel like that link to the past, that romanticism and nostalgia for, hey, this is when humans made things. This is when it was made by actual people. I feel like we're getting to that point. So that that's something. Next Generation was made in the 80s, and it was like you could get that sense of that's where maybe it was going. So yeah, that's very interesting. I'd like to see a lot of people's. I always love people's theories and speculations on things, even because when you put something out, I'm not a creative person, but when you put something out into the world and people have a take on it, and then they feel like they take it into their own and say, "Hey, this is what I thought the story was about, and this is what the meaning that I took from it." I'm always interested to see different people's perspectives and different ways that they look at it. And then I'm also interested to hear the creators themselves say, "Hey, this is what I meant with this. This is what I meant to say." Or then you have the other creators, like I think about Christopher Nolan and certain people who they don't
Yeah.
do directors' commentaries, and they say, "Hey, I want you to figure, like, what did it mean to you? What were your takeaways from this?" So yeah, I always, it's interesting to me to get both sides of the coin, to hear both sides of those things. But
It
I've
kind of also gets into like the same idea of like, say, these science fiction stories thousands of years in the future, or like what I was trying to do with Huxley with like, how do people find meaning, find purpose, and create stories, and when everything's so different. And I even feel like in early, like getting back to Nolan, like there were so many like advancements with filmmaking and all this kind of stuff, everyone going digital. And a lot of filmmakers like, I don't care if there's all these new tools. I want to shoot on film. I want to shoot on IMAX. I want to
yes.
shoot my whole new film on IMAX and shoot everything in camera. Maybe there's some VFX, but like most of it is in camera. At a time when, they could do things completely differently, they still choose to do that because that's what gives them meaning. That's what gives them value. And that's what they think looks the best and elevates. It's like the height of human creativity and the height of human achievement in filmmaking. I think that to me is like, that is will hold the most value and most respect from even the audience, where it's just like, wow, I can't
Yeah.
believe they did all that. Like, this looks beautiful. This is like people can know when something was made with care and craft. And I think kind of getting back to the Star Trek, to like the level of respect, knowing that there were no shortcuts and there were no help. It was just like people at the top of their craft creating a masterpiece. I think will have the highest value to an audience, to me at least, I think.
100%. I think it's going to be timeless, and all mediums, movies, video games, comic books. I think it doesn't matter the format. It's the emotion and the message that you're connecting with the audience, from the creator to the audience. I think that's going to be timeless regardless of format. I'm also very interested in, because like I said, I'm not a creative, so I don't have this experience. When you see Huxley in a store, when you see that, like I saw a little bit of in the documentary, when you were getting you had the physical books in your hand, and you're able to feel it. Can you kind of, I guess, describe that feeling when you first saw Huxley in a physical format, and you say, "Hey, I made this. This is something that I put out into the world. It was in my head, and now here it is in my hand." What was that feeling like?
It was pretty surreal. I mean, one of the things that kept me going was, I don't know if mentioned that in the documentary, but like I kind of had Akira next to me when I was starting. And once you start getting through the first couple pages and you see how long it takes and you see how hard it is, and then you go and look at Akira and you're like, this is like 4 years of someone's life, just this one book. Or these 10 pages was like 3 months of a human life in physical product
Mm.
form, or in physical art form. And so like that always really resonated with me, and why another reason I kind of want to follow in the footsteps of all my heroes, like this kind of like shared experience or shared like creative milestones or journey that maybe I'll never meet these people. A lot of them are dead, but like I want to feel like a deeper connection with a lot of these guys that I
Mm.
really respect. And once Huxley was done, it was on my desk. I kind of had that same moment where I'm just like, this is like 10 years of my life in a physical form that will last forever if I pass away or whatever. Like this will live on and people can experience this and enjoy this. And I have no idea where it's going to go, but it's now out in the world and it's going to outlive me. And that's a really awesome thing. It just feels like happy to have shared in that experience of all my heroes that did the same thing.
Mm.
And it was really cool.
Man, hearing you describe that is so interesting because it's, I think, very similar and akin to being a father, of putting my son
Yeah.
out into the world and wanting him to out he's going to outlive me and see the things that he is able to accomplish makes me proud. So I can get that sense from you. It feels like a fatherly pride and love for your creation. So that's really cool. I'm also interested. What do you want the feeling that someone, when they read Huxley, when they get that book in their hands, in the first 60 seconds, what feeling are you hoping hits them before they even know the plot? When they just, first thing they do when they open that book.
Maybe feeling like I think maybe feeling like this is something special and handcrafted that doesn't come along very often. And I feel like that has been the reaction at some of the Comic Cons we went to so far.
Nice.
Like people will just be walking by and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, what's this?" And they'll open this like, wow, like this is a lot of work. Like this doesn't look like every other comic. I was like, thank you. I was like, awesome. That's the
Yes.
reaction I wanted. So
Yes.
like that was really
Yeah.
cool. Like they just opened, they're like, wow, this is like a lot of work. I haven't seen a comic that's like this. I'm just like, it definitely the time to, that
Yes.
didn't happen overnight. That took a long time.
Yeah,
Um,
man. And I feel like in the world of so much, the attention spans getting shorter, like everything is short form nowadays, and headlines of you taking out of context, you're not even getting the full story. You just want the headline of, like, everything is clickbait. I feel like handcrafted, meticulous things that feel like it's taken years to make. I almost feel like a Hanzo sword, like a Japanese, like something that fine crafted. I think it's worth the effort. It's worth the years, rather than you see something real short, quick, and it's like it's consumed it in just the same amount of time it takes to make it. It's consumed in that time, and so I feel like what you're doing and the handcrafted nature of it is really good. So this is some fantastic stuff. I'm
yeah, I was gonna say
yeah.
it's very interesting to like, a lot of the reason I started this also is because I also didn't want to be influenced by, I mean, this is like, now I guess for us it's a long time ago, but like at the beginning of social media, we were kind of at the start, like Instagram was just starting, all this stuff was just starting. We were kind of living through this changing technological environment, and a lot of people would post their work and get super influenced by the feedback, like, wow, people really like this painting, I'm going to do more paintings like that. And I really didn't like that, and I wanted to make something completely cut off from that like feedback loop, because I didn't want to post, I had a story I wanted to tell, and I wanted to take the time to tell it, and I didn't want to post as I went, where maybe I post a painting or a page from the comic and maybe people really like this side character, and then if I took that feedback it would be, well, maybe I should change my whole story because people seem to really like this, and I go off in a totally different direction based off of some like social media data. I didn't really want to do that. Maybe that was a mistake or whatever, but like I really wanted to tell the story I wanted to tell outside of any other influence other than what I thought was cool. And I feel like that's harder and harder now, because I think I kind of talk to a lot of people and get the lay of the landscape, I guess. And the times now is more like, oh, yeah, like you were saying, put out a bunch of short form content, kind of like feed the beast. And it's one way of doing things, but I really like the idea of just like picking something you really think is interesting, taking the time and putting it out there when you're really happy with it. Maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know.
And I echo all of your sentiments. Before we wrap up and close here, I did want to ask you about the prequel, The Oracle.
Mhm.
When you come into this, I think you and I both lived through the Star Wars prequels, if you are to hand it to someone and say, hey, this is the story that takes place before, are you the type of guy that says, hey, watch episode 4 first, A New Hope, or watch episode 1 first because chronologically that's the story that came first?
Right.
Would you hand them the Oracle first, or would you hand them Huxley first?
I'm not sure. I guess it would just be what they're really into because it's interesting because Huxley's because of the way that's illustrated, it feels a little more lighthearted maybe. Um,
Mm.
and a lot of the reason, I mean, we kind of get back into that what you mentioned earlier, like how do you put people into the story? How do you throw people into it? And I think a lot of the directors I worked with tended to do that. Like working with like Luc Besson, I was a huge fan of Fifth Element. Like you just are thrown right into that world. You're like, what is this?
Yes.
What is all this stuff? Oh my
Yeah.
God, there's like he's living in this apartment in this futuristic city, and you kind of figure it out as you go. And I tried to do that with Huxley, I think, where there was a lot of other story that I had to like edit down and cut. Like, okay, I don't have 20 pages to set up who Max is, who Kai is, who this is, what is the history. It's just like first day on the job, they find this thing, what go, you know. But I think I really wanted to get maybe a bit more of a human connection. And so the Oracle is very much where did Max come from? How are humans born to this world? How do they join the army? What type of stuff would they do? And kind of peeling back the curtain about how humans lived a bit more, it was really interesting to me. So it's much more of like a serious like soldier war story, whereas the original Huxley is maybe much more of like a slightly more lighthearted action adventure story. So it's kind of like different stories for different audiences. I guess it could be almost like episode 4 of Star Wars, and then Rogue One feels a lot more like serious and like I wouldn't say evil,
Yes.
but it's much more or like Andor or something. Like
Yeah.
they're both
Yeah.
Star Wars, but it's very different tones in the
Yes.
universe, which is awesome. Like some people maybe wouldn't like Andor that liked Episode 4, and vice versa, but I really think both are awesome.
Yes. Man, well, that is a great place to end. I really appreciate you taking the time, Ben. You've been very gracious with your time, and I could talk to you about Star Trek and other things all day, but I want to be respectful of your time. I did want to let you have the floor. What I guess the main Huxley, I guess, experience that you want the audience to have? What is that, and where can they get it?
Right. So the first graphic novel, Huxley, and the new prequel, Oracle, are available worldwide in bookstores and Amazon. They should be in local bookstores and retailers worldwide, which is amazing. You can find out more info on huxleysaga.com. There's a bunch of cool trailers and videos on the Huxley YouTube channel. It should just be like YouTube Huxley Saga. And yeah, just stay up to date with new updates, prequel stories. The new book is just finished the latest book over Christmas, so I'll have more info about the third prequel, which is going to be. I would say this is almost like Dune Part 1 of the story, and the next book is Dune Part 2, telling the
Ah,
rest of this bigger kind of like sci-fi epic prequel.
yes.
Um, and then the one after that will be a totally different movie slash story. So
Perfect,
lot of books
man.
the next
Thank
couple of years, lot of work to do.
Yes, man. Excellent. Ben, you are a genius, sir. I'm very happy to see all of your progress and growth and everything. And I wish you the best, my friend. If you ever want to promote anything, you always have an open seat here on this Comic Cook. So thank you very much, sir. I really
Thanks so much for
appreciate
having
you.
me.